we'd like to welcome home another Katie Spotz, who made history on Sunday, becoming the youngest person and the first woman to row alone across the Atlantic, more than 2,800 miles. As Michelle Miller tells us, that's not bad for someone who says she was the worst rower on her college team.
22-year-old Katie Spotz has cycled across the country, run through the Mojave Desert, and was the first to swim the length of the Allegheny River.
Was this a piece of cake?
But nothing compares to this.
This was the hardest by far.
Rowing the breadth of the Atlantic Ocean for 70 days, all by herself. On January 3rd, Katie Spotz hopped aboard the 19-foot lift and cast off from Senegal, West Africa. She ended up in Georgetown, Guyana. There would be no watch boat, only a beacon and a radio. Katie was the show for 500,000 fans online. And when she got into trouble off the coast of South America,
there were several times that I thought my boat would capsize.
They tracked her 400-mile detour around dangerous swells.
I did have moments where I didn't know where I'd find the strength to continue on.
But she did. And in the process, she raised $75,000 for a group supplying clean drinking water to people worldwide.
More than anything, it's often ourselves that hold us back from doing things. So I think it's important to question that and challenge that.
Even if you're not facing an ocean alone.
Amazing.
Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
My name is Katie, and I like to swim, bike, run, and row ridiculously long distances. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, when I was a kid, I was on all the team sports. I was on soccer, basketball, baseball. Yet no matter what sport I was on, there I was, sitting on the bench. However, there came a point in my life where I realized that you don't need to be extraordinary. You don't need to be a superhero to do these incredible things. I started my journey into endurance challenges very small. It was my senior year of high school, and as a requirement to graduate, I needed to take one more gym class. I figured I'd pick the class where I didn't have to worry about people lining up and picking sides, so I picked this running, walking class. I knew I could walk, so I figured it was an easy A class. During that first week, I noticed some other people running, and I was intrigued by this. I said to myself, let's set this target and try to run 1 mile straight, something I never had done before. By the end of that mile, my face was red, I was sweating like crazy, my lungs felt like they were on fire. I had no idea how to pace myself, but I did it, and I was pretty excited to have done something I never thought I could. So that next week, I wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, I could run a little bit further. So 1 mile turned into 2. 2 miles turned into 3, and by the end of the semester, I had done my first double-digit 10-mile run. That's when I considered doing this impossible feat called the marathon. Up until that point, I didn't know anyone else who had done it. So to me, it was only the Kenyans that were capable of doing something as challenging as a 26.2-mile run. I had all sorts of excuses why someone like me couldn't do it, that I wasn't tough enough, that I wasn't strong enough. It was a huge internal battle, but after 4 or 5 months of training, at age 18, I did it. And it was really the people that I was running with that inspired me even more. You see, there weren't just Kenyans doing this race, there were people of all walks of life. There were runners that were young and old, thick and thin. It made me realize that endurance goes much deeper than the physical. It's heart, passion, spirit that pushes you through those moments when you think you can't. So, I became curious again to see what else I might be able to do. That led to a 3,300-mile bike ride from one side of the country to the next. At 21, I became the first and only person to swim the entire length of the Allegheny River, which is very close to here. And finally, I decided to run solo and unsupported across 2 deserts. Each and every challenge, I was hungry for more. Now, rowing a boat across an ocean was not my idea. It was actually an idea that found me when I least expected it. I was sitting on a bus, just chatting to some guy sitting next to me, and we got on the topic of endurance challenges. To be quite honest, at that point, I felt like I had heard it all, so I kind of tuned it all out, thinking that it was going to be a conversation that I've already had before. You see, I heard about Mount Everest, I heard about people sailing around the world and cycling across countries, but when he mentioned that his friend had rowed a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, I had to find out more. So I did my homework and I found out about the boats, I found out about the equipment, who else had done it, and then I found out about the long list of dangers from 30-foot waves, sharks, sleep deprivation, social isolation, the list went on. I ignored my ocean rowing idea in hopes that it would fade away and bother someone else. As time progressed, I realized that I would be faced with this decision between A, rowing across the Atlantic, or B, spend the rest of my life wondering why I didn't. And to me, a life of regret seemed much more challenging than 70 days alone at sea. So it only seemed like the logical thing to just get on with it and try to do this row. There were a few things that I was missing when I decided to row across the Atlantic. You see, I didn't have a boat or oars. I didn't have sponsors or a plan. To be completely honest, I didn't even know how to row a boat. Minor details, but I figured that if I could swim, run, bike all day, that maybe, just maybe, I could row all day too. All right, so in January of 2010, we're going to fast forward, and I'm saying my final farewells to my friends and family, wondering if that would be the last time I would see them again. And I fly myself to Africa. Suddenly, here are my neighbors, goats. Electricity is going out on a daily basis, and everyone is speaking French. There's some storms on the Atlantic, so my boat's arrival was delayed and delayed and delayed some more. I felt like I was in over my head before the journey ever began. Finally, my boat did arrive, and I was taking some of the first few oar strokes of the million it would take to cross. On my 19-foot boat, I had 2 sets of oars, 4 iPods, 300 chocolate bars, and a lot of determination. But having said that, I was still rowing in an ocean of unknowns. You see, half of the people who have attempted this journey, they didn't make it, and the last American woman to try, she needed to be rescued, and she was an Olympic rower. I knew that the odds were against me, but I was as ready as I'd ever be. So this picture was taken out of the port of Dakar. It's the most western part of Africa, and that yellow speck on the horizon was my 19-foot rowboat, and you'll notice that there wasn't a helicopter flying right overhead, there was no boat following right behind me, which means for those 70 days, I was completely alone. Or so I thought. On day 2, I start to feel like the small fish in a big pond. Some of the most frightening moments on my journey were these close calls with oncoming freighters that felt like they were moving icebergs. On night 9, some nights the moon would be so bright, it was as if a spotlight was shining down on me. Other nights there'd be thousands of stars, sometimes shooting stars, punctuating the pitch black sky, and every night was a spectacle. As I'd look into the water, I would be able to see this glowing plankton. It was a type of phosphorescence that would glow in the water with each oar stroke. Super cool. All right. By day 20, I reached the 4th waymark, and I wanted to do something special to celebrate that milestone, I wasn't really sure what I could do, but the decision was made for me when I started to see these fins appear. I know they may look like sharks, and I did see plenty of those out there too, but these were actually dolphins. I had 10 or 15 dolphins surrounding my boat, close enough for me to touch, doing all sorts of flips and tricks, and it felt like they were cheering me on and celebrating with me mid-ocean. All right, on day 26, all right, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little, whoops. This is actually supposed to be day 37, you could ignore that. On day 37, I am halfway across the Atlantic, and this is what that looks like. This is also what it looked like on day 1 and 2 and 3, and every single day looked pretty much like this. So when I reached the halfway point, instead of being excited, I was completely overwhelmed. There were many, many moments on my journey that I felt like giving up, like I felt like quitting, and this was one of them. I had already rowed 1,500 miles, and guess what? I still had 1,500 more to go. So I told myself I'm not doing it. I'm just not going to do 3,000 miles. But what I will do is I will do 1 mile 3,000 times. And it's really so simple, but so true that when the big picture just got so overwhelming, it was all a matter of just focusing on that next day, that next hour, that next song on my iPod, whatever I needed to do. It was always just that one baby step ahead. All right. By day 62, I am 100 miles away from reaching land, which means that I can be in a dry bed and have a warm shower in 2 or 3 days. Yay, right? But instead, the ocean has a different plan for me, and I am battling 30-foot waves. I'm rowing in a part of the ocean near the continental shelf, so it's a part that jumps from being miles deep to very shallow. It's known to be rough, and with a strong wind and swift current, waves just seem to be spiking out of the blink of an eye, and I can no longer trust the sea. Having these super big waves in the middle of an ocean isn't as much of an issue as you're about to reach land, because that means that you could be crashing into a cliff, crashing into another boat. To ensure that I would have a safe arrival, that meant that I would need to get a boat to tow me in, otherwise it might crash. When I envisioned doing this journey, I was very stubborn on this idea of doing it unassisted. So to do that, I worked with my weather guy, and we made a bold decision, adding 400 more miles to my journey, rowing 2 countries west where the current and the conditions were calmer and would give me a better chance to arrive without the assistance of that boat. This decision could have easily left me out there for 2 more weeks. I did have enough chocolate for that, but yeah, basically we added that 400 miles, and luckily it only adds 8 more days, and by day 70, I reached land. Reaching land was one of the most surreal experiences I have ever had. I felt like I was winning an Emmy, completing a marathon, and being released out of solitary confinement all at once. After 2 years of planning and 70 days alone at sea, at age 22, my dream had become a reality, and I had become the youngest person ever to row an ocean solo. So with one night, I went from complete solitude to being in front of millions. I talked to Katie Couric, Anderson Cooper, Diane Sawyer, NPR, Discovery Channel, among others. I was even selected by Glamour magazine as their Woman of the Year, meeting people like Oprah and Fergie, Jennifer Lopez, Julia Roberts, and it was completely over the top. But they all kept asking me question. Why? Why did I do that row? What was the purpose behind it? And yes, I love challenging myself, but there was a much bigger purpose beyond world records, beyond personal achievement. This was a row for water. It was a way to raise funding and awareness for the billion people on our planet that don't have clean water to drink. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this after telling you another story about an adventure I did immediately after that row. So after rowing the Atlantic, there was one question that needed to be answered, and that was, what next? And for me, my natural inclination was to raise the stakes even higher. So 1 year later, I embarked on what I thought would be my toughest endurance challenge yet. The name of this event was Race Across America. It was a non-stop bicycle race from one side of the country to the next. With my friend and teammate, we were attempting to break the 2-person world record, making it across in 7 days. Now, that's about the same amount of time it takes to drive across America. So to do that, we would each need to ride our bicycles 200 miles a person, or 400 miles as a team, burning through up to 10,000 calories every single day. I trained very hard for that adventure. I moved to the West Coast from Ohio. In one of my training rides, I was able to do 375 miles in 24 hours nonstop. I felt like the record was in the bag, and it was more in reach than ever before. However, they have this saying that it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. 7 days before the race, I was doing my last big training ride up and over the Santa Cruz Mountains. It was a ride that I've done hundreds of times before. I knew every turn in the road. I knew every landmark and route. But what made this ride different from all the rest of them is that I fell off my bicycle. I got up thinking that it was maybe just a few bumps and scratches, but went home, was icing and elevating, thinking that I pulled a muscle and I'd still be able to push through and do this race. But after going to the doctor, he told me it was a little bit more serious than a pulled muscle. He told me that I had a broken pelvis. Apparently, this is one of the toughest bones in the body to break. Most people break it from falling out of buildings and car accidents. That's supposed to be attached. Basically, my doctor gave me my crutches, told me that I'd be able to walk again in about 3 months, and said that there was no way that I'd be able to be a part of the race anymore. I felt like the journey was over before it even began. But I'm going to share with you a short video about how we did it anyway. We still made it across in 7 days.
Took some air.
Katie and I met about 4 years ago. We both rode the Atlantic, and now we're embarking on a 3,000-mile relay cycle ride across the US. That's a really tough target, setting a new world record.
So you're still racing with this?
It's taken something that's kind of a selfish journey and been able to take it to a whole other level.
Communication, man. I love
walkies are busted. We just can't plan anything. We're definitely gonna go We all run on twisted ankles and busted up knees and scratches and bruises.
It's supposed to be hard for us, but my 1 minute on the bike is nothing in comparison to somebody a little bit more than drink.
Completely with my upper body, and because I couldn't do those 200 miles each day, we had our friends and teammates chip in, so we still made it across in 7 days. Now, as I mentioned earlier, each and every one of these adventures had a much bigger purpose behind them, and that was water. I'll never forget this moment when I was sitting in class. It was in college, and one of my professors mentioned that the wars of the future would be fought because of water, and in some countries it's already the case. I didn't understand. I felt like my teacher just told me that the wars of the future would be fought because of air. I couldn't imagine something as basic as water being a source of war. But I learned that over 8 billion people didn't have something they needed. Now, that is one very big number. I can't wrap my head around it. So perhaps 1 in 8 might be easier. 1 in 8 people didn't have something that I've always taken for granted, something I've never gone without: clean water. So these billion people, they get their water from awful places and it makes them sick. From ponds, muddy rivers, dry riverbeds, sometimes from puddles in the ground. Millions of kids and their moms are walking each and every day just to get this dirty water. I was pretty shocked by everything I was learning that half of all schools don't have clean water. If I was born somewhere like Kenya, Uganda, or Malawi, that would mean I'd have to walk 4 miles every single day just to collect water that wasn't even clean. And I'd have to be prepared to wait because that line could be 8 hours long. Finally, I thought I was such a hot shot for doing my endurance challenges, but I should have been doing my training with them. As I mentioned, they make their 4-mile trek to collect water, but on the way back, they're carrying it in these jerry cans, these water containers, that once filled with water could weigh 40 pounds. After learning all the facts, I then got excited because I learned that this was a problem that had solutions. There were solutions like digging and drilling wells, catching the rainwater, and protecting mountain springs. A $30 donation was enough to help one person gain access to clean water for life. So it wasn't just a row across the Atlantic, it was a row for water, swim for water, ride for water, and because of those adventures, over $150,000 has been raised so that kids and their moms no longer needed to walk to collect that dirty water. But I'm not here to convince you that water is the most important cause or to row across an ocean, but we all have something that we'd like to do that seems unreasonable or out of reach. And I'm here to tell you that you are capable of more than you think. Think about whatever your out of reach goal is and realize that it is possible simply if you just take one step after another. You might not think you could run a marathon. Well, get out there and run a mile. You might want to travel the world. Well, start here. Start in your own backyard. Whatever you do, just take that first step. Thank you. I don't know how much time we have, but if there is time, I'm happy to do any Q&A or afterwards.
20 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit about your Allegheny River trek and where it started, what kind of support you had, how you went over Kinzer Dam,
Yeah.
it's an oil sea, etc.
Yeah. This is like the first time that I've been able to do a talk where everyone in the room knows the Alleghenies, so this is cool. So I did that journey when I was about 21, and it was inspired after hearing about this swimmer called Martin Strel, who swam the Mississippi and the Amazon. And basically, I had a month over summer break. I had a month of time to play with, and I had a friend that liked kayaking, so we became a team. I did have, he was carrying all the gear for that journey, so it was really a matter of trying to find what river could be covered in a month, and it really worked out because Allegheny was so close to home. So the river itself is 352 miles, but the first 27 or so are so shallow that you can't actually swim it. So we started at the source and hiked it. The logistics of how that journey worked was I had my friend James kayaking alongside me. We camped every night, had a little jet oil stove, so it was very on a shoestring. And then as far as like the locks and dams, we were able to go either around them or through them. So that journey took, I think there was one off day, but it took maybe like 27 days or so. So each day I would swim between 12 to 15 miles, with the longest being 22.
How did you find the condition of the water?
Honestly, I felt like it was pretty clean, except for the last day, as I was approaching the point in Pittsburgh. I wasn't ever really sick, but I would say minus the last day, it was very clean.
Katie, on your rowing across the Atlantic, most important thing I want to know was on your iPod playlist. What were you listening to?
This is way dorky, but some days I would set it up like I had my own schedule. Like in the morning, I listened to this. I had audiobooks. I had Spanish, so I could learn Spanish while I was out there. And then I had music. And then the biggest treat for me at the end of the day was I would listen to comedians. So I had 14 hours of that. So I tried to conserve, but. I would listen to Comedy Central Presents at the evening as my reward. So it was a mixture. The reason I have so many is because things do fail and you need backups. And to me, having that audio entertainment was kind of, I guess I was pretty attached to having some voice to listen to. Audiobooks, different podcasts, music, and then comedians. Well, it was harder for me to adjust being back on land than it was on the boat. I didn't have seasickness, I had land sickness. It was hard for me to eat, it was hard for me to sleep. I think something as basic as seeing new colors, like, and see, and like, even going to like the grocery store and like smells were overpowering and it, like the senses were just overloaded. Making choices, I know this sounds really silly, but like when I was on the journey for 70 days, I didn't really make any choices. I knew what I was going to be doing, rowing. I knew what I was going to be listening to. I mean, my day had such a very structured, you know, so that it was kind of peaceful in that my mind was free to go wherever it wanted without the constant what next, what next. But even going into a grocery store was like, oh my God, choices again. And so choices, and there were a lot of things that above and beyond, like when you get wounds on the ocean, they don't really heal because you're constantly being exposed to water. So it took me months to be able to heal like fully. So physically, mentally, emotionally, like any adventure I do, I kind of anticipate the month after to go through a low, just because, you know, my body has adapted to 10 hours of endorphins going through my body, and now it's like nothing. So yeah, it's not uncommon to do an event like this and then have it be more challenging to adjust and deal with back towards land. Which, I mean, yeah, the first week was like, everything's amazing, you know, and but it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. One thing that I forgot to mention, as a way to continuing to support H2O for Life, which is the partner that I'm working with to help fund water projects, I recently released a book called Just Keep Rowing with 70 lessons for the 70 days I spent at sea. A portion will go to support H2O for Life, and they work all around the world to help communities get clean drinking water.